Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. This is number 100. This is the 100th Tuesday on which I've had nothing else to do. It's also, and do you see how well I timed this? It's also the big fly past today to celebrate 100 years of the Royal Air Force in the UK. Timing is everything. It's taken me nearly 2 years to get that timing worked out. So there we are. Good day to you, wherever you might be in the world. A wide and a varied panel today, including now in full colour Bruce down there in New Zealand. We're honoured to have John Taylor with us again, Louis, Nicola, and of course Patrick. Yes, that bloke, Patrick. Right, so let's just dive straight in. I suppose last Friday the big headline news is that well, the FAA have perhaps got a little bit more authority over private drone flyers and more particularly model aircraft flyers. Perhaps you'd like to unpack that properly for me, John. What happened on Friday?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm still reading through the decision and trying to figure it all out. This is the second case I filed challenging FAA regulation. The first case that was decided last year was a much simpler case, and it was challenging the FAA's registration regulation regarding model aircraft, and the statute was fairly clear on that one. This case was challenging the creation of Part 101, which embodied the definition of model aircraft and the parameters of model aircraft that were in Section 336 and embodied that into a new regulation, and then said if you fell outside of that, you fell within Part 107. And it was a much more complicated case, many more issues. One of the questions was, can the FAA establish a regulation regarding model aircraft, even if it mirrors the criteria of Section 336? And the court said, well, this is a regulation regarding model aircraft, and technically they're not allowed to do that, but it doesn't really regulate anything, so we're not going to stop them from doing it. So they allowed that to exist. I also tried to seek some clarity through challenging it. The fact that the FAA didn't define what a community-based organization was under 336, and they didn't define something even more difficult is what does within the programming mean? And I was very disappointed with the court's decision on that. They said, well, people don't know what that means necessarily, but the FAA says they're working on that. They've been working on it for 4 years. We don't know when they're going to finish working on it, but we're going to defer to them. And the basis of my challenge on that is when you have a statute that has a criminal penalty, it has to be sufficiently clear that people can comply with it. And people really are kind of guessing whether they're complying with Section 336 or not. So that was the basis for that challenge. And again, I was disappointed with what the court had to say about that. Another area of the decision I was disappointed with is I pointed out that by considering SUAVs to be aircraft under American law, that you're inescapably bringing the entire body of American aircraft law down onto SUAVs because we're now aircraft. And the court said, well, during oral argument, we asked the FAA, the DOJ attorney, whether they planned on enforcing other aircraft regulations against SUAVs, and they said they didn't plan on doing that, and that's good enough for us. So basically, they allowed the attorney to pinky swear that they didn't plan on applying the law as written. And from a legal standpoint, I find that kind of disappointing as well. But in summary, I lost. so the Part 101 is still there, and if you don't fall within Part 101, you have to comply with 107, and we're not getting any more. They're not forcing the FAA to provide any more clarity.
So where was the AMA when all of this was happening?
I don't know.
Oh, good answer, but succinct and not to the point. And I understand that there's a slight. So what? Hang on, before I understand something. So what does this mean for aero modelers in America? What changed on Friday?
Well, actually, nothing changed on Friday. My goal was to vacate the regulation, or parts of the regulation anyway, so that perhaps hobbyists wouldn't have to, wouldn't be moved into having to get licensure under Part 107 if they didn't meet the criteria that were in Section 336. That was my goal, and that didn't occur. So it basically, it affirmed that the FAA was lawful in doing what they had done. So nothing has really changed other than not getting that removed.
So they haven't. There's no movement on the definition of a community-based organization, and I do find it. So what happens if they do start prosecuting based on real aircraft regulations now that they've pinky sweared that they won't?
I don't think that that's binding on them.
Okay.
So they would just move forward with that, and in a manner of speaking, they've already done that, because hobbyist registration, their authority for doing that, according to their court filings, was that they had statutory authorization for doing it because we're aircraft. Yet that wasn't within Part 101 or 107, so they're already outside of that. And if they do it again, as I said, I don't think you're going to be able to hold them to something the DOJ attorney said during an oral argument.
Because that immediately brings to mind, and I'll let others, I'm sure that everyone else wants to jump in this, it immediately brings to mind that BV loss is coming, and they're talking about airworthy certificates and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, we'll just let them roll in with the manned aviation standards and all good stuff like that. I mean, that's you're nodding your head there, Patrick, and looking this way and that way, forwards and backwards over the Irish Sea. What do you and Louis? What's all right? Over to the floor.
I really like my Portuguese authorities. The government has just issued a new regulation starting on Friday that will take about 4 to 5 months to come into effect. And the regulation is very simple. Up to 250 grams, no registration. 250 grams upwards, you need to register the pilot. Above 900 grams, mandatory insurance. That's easy. So it's an easy regulation to comply.
Yeah, but the problem with that is lobbyists and consultants don't make any money when the stuff makes sense. Okay, so the way it works here in the United States is you got to make it as convoluted, muddy the water, get as many partners in there as you can, and then you can make a good 20-year career out of some lousy lobbying. I mean, we could probably, John hit on a few points. We could probably go a whole hour on that, on some of the points. But main one is the point you made about the law being kind of vague, and then going ahead and trying to prosecute someone on a vague law. To me, that's kind of dangerous. The CBO thing and the aircraft and the model aircraft being aircraft, both the hobbyists and the commercial people were warned about calling them aircraft, but they charged ahead anyway. The CBO thing, in the beginning, the CBO was supposed to be like, was going to be like AMA, but the federal government can't name, a certain, let's say, group or organization and say they're the people. So we have problems with all of that. The other thing that doesn't really make any sense is, if you look at the UTM thing, it talks about 101E, which is hobbyists that operate around airports. If you get these people like they're advocating to repeal 336, where does that leave the hobbyist? That really just leaves the hobbyist on the field. Pretty much like the FAA said that they wanted in the ARC in 2008. They said, Air Traffic Organization came out and said, if you're not on a hobby field, you're not a hobbyist. And that's what's coming. And, you asked who supported John. And I keep bringing that up, and maybe you see this, John, but I keep bringing it up. Nobody supported John on this deal. AMA, nowhere to be found. Node, nowhere to be found. Commercial Drone Alliance, most of these people all signed on or counter to the notion of the hobbyist.
Well, if I can address that real briefly, just because I don't want to leave that standing, I felt like I got a tremendous amount of support from individual hobbyists. The drone users group were some people I'd only met Chris Vo once in my life for about 5 minutes. He coordinated a fundraising campaign, and then I had a lot of help from the legal end of things from Jonathan and Loretta, Alcalay and Kathy Yotis, and others. So I feel like I got a lot of support. I realize you're discussing major organizations, and no, I didn't there, but I didn't want to leave that hanging because I never felt like I was completely out here on my own. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's fine. I think that, you have all of these people that are at the drone show circuit, tooting their own horns and banging their own drums and talking about others, such advocates for drones, and they're not really there when they're needed. And in this case,
I don't know, Bruce, have you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it is a very dangerous situation when you simply say, when a regulatory authority says, just trust us, we promise we want this power, but we promise we'll never use it. I mean, their lips are moving, they're lying. You cannot rely on that. That is so dangerous because, as John's already pointed out, well, they've already started making moves in that area. It's a thin end of a wedge, and if you want to reduce the cost to all the parties involved, you clarify so that you don't have these cases that drag on with tiny little points of detail. And if you take it to the court 3 times, you get 3 different results. It has to be clear. It has to be very simple. And you, instead of trusting people, you need to make sure that the people involved are also bound by regulation. The regulation works both ways, but at the moment it's like, you've handed them a blank slate and say, do what you like.
I'm not sure who's got the play. They're arriving, whoever it is, they're arriving. But I think, isn't there a slight, perhaps, window of opportunity for you in an unusual way, maybe? And it was Judge Merrick Garland that did this gig on Friday. And if I can't remember the name of the new chap, I'm afraid. If he comes in, then you could maybe take it to a higher place, John.
I'm still looking into that. I'm not sure how. The higher place is going to be the Supreme Court, and there are actually 3 levels. I could ask for a rehearing before the same 3 judges. I could ask for it to be heard by the entire D.C. Circuit, what they refer to as en banc, or I could petition for certiorari to the Supreme Court. But I'm really just not sure that that's a. I'm still looking at that. And just by the way, it was interesting to note that the new nominee for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, was the judge who wrote the decision last year vacating the registration regulation. It's just pure coincidence, but there have been 2 Supreme Court nominees on these 2 different cases.
Yeah,
is this somewhere that there should be more lobbying? I mean, if I was sort of trying to do this, I'd be getting into all the schools and running a nationwide model awareness thing in the schools, then having the school kids come out on camera and on the media and go, we want to be able to fly our models are not aircraft. Get that you got to lobby as much as the other people lobby and tug on the heartstrings of America and say, look, you can't have the big corporations running roughshod over the rights of these little children. They want to be able to fly their toy planes and they shouldn't be treated like 747s. Is there any opportunity for that sort of thing? But that's where something like the AMA has to step in, because they are the body that could do that, but they seem to be sitting on the sidelines. Amazing.
Okay, I just want to jump in as well to speak to the AMA. I don't understand where's the advantage for them for not being part of this. I'm at a bit of a loss as to why they wouldn't have been there with you.
Can I go? They want the hobbyists on the model flying fields. Easy.
Yeah, but there's some other things going on here. One, Bruce, you and your pragmatism, I don't know what to do with you. But the problem, there's one of the issues here in the United States. But if you are seen as kind of an antagonist or someone who questions the FAA, you get marginalized. Ask me how I know. But that's a problem. So most people don't want to seem like they're being publicly at odds with the FAA. But, you know, the grassroots thing, I think a lot of people kind of discount the grassroots thing. And it's funny that you mentioned some of that stuff, Bruce. I've said things like this before. I will say, you know, I looked at the 990s. You know, there was a call for a new CEO of AMA, or new leadership. And I actually applied for that job. And doing some research on the AMA, I found out that they only published their 990s, which you have to do if you're a nonprofit, 501c3, 6, blah, blah, blah. That they were spending about $500,000 a year on lobbying. And over a 4 or 5 year period, spent about $2.5 million in lobbying. I'm not sure that they got their money's worth.
Where? Lobbying? Where? There's a lot of places to do some lobbying, but where? At the FAA, at the Congress, at Senate?
Congress is where you lobby. But the point with it is most of the other groups are spending a lot of money to lobby Congress on the short-sighted plan that the NASA is going to be a lot safer if we get rid of the hobbyists, and then we'll be able to do beyond visual line of sight and drone delivery. I think that the common thread here with the NASA is the lack of FAA enforcement. Now, you know, we went over the registration deal. Remember, you know, how they drew the registration task force together, and everyone that was on the registration task force, AMA wanted to write a dissenting opinion. They couldn't get any support. And basically what had happened there is, well, if we have registration, we have a way of tracking all of these rogue flyers, and the NASA is going to be safe. We'll have no more of these mid-air collisions. We'll have no more of these sightings at places where we don't want drones and yada, yada, yada. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We got registration. Here you go. And it didn't work. And then, you know, John, you went over there and you knocked that down. They went to Congress. They got it back, and they're still having sightings. And, you know, Greenpeace is still flying Superman into the nuclear power plant and yada, yada, yada. It's not going to work until there's an enforcement plan or program. And even this deal here now where they're talking about repealing 336 and the ID and tracking. These people have no idea what the, let's say, technological barriers are to a implementable ID and tracking system that is safe, can't be spoofed, going to work everywhere, not cost everyone a fortune.
Well, yes, there are some things. And Nicola, you're still happily over there with zero. Are there no regulations on the horizon for you, Nicola?
Well, not sure about the horizon, but actually, quite recently, I found out a page on the Bulgarian version of FAA's website that is specifically aimed, or has been recently adjusted to reflect drones, because drones haven't been here for like decades, but apparently that thing has been there for quite a few years, certainly well before drones became what they are now. And there's an application, there's an email address, and it says, well, you're basically forbidden from flying in regulated airspace, and every time you want to do so, you should ask for you know, full permission, and you should submit a flight plan, etc., fees and whatnot. But you know, I only recently found that page out, and it has been there for years, and nobody is doing anything about it. So apparently there is something, or at least there is the pretense of somebody doing something, but in fact there's no real regulation here. And at some point, it was a hot topic for about a week, and now it seems to have died down. And I'm not sure, probably they're just waiting for the EU to release some guidelines before they accept something and start enforcing something. And even then, enforcing would only be possible if they actually see you doing it. If, you know, you just do it, you don't publish it, like upload a video like I do, but perhaps, you know, go along the lines of something like, Well, I'm pretty sure that with this antenna in this video transmitter and the antenna mounted like this, you can do 30 kilometers. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm not saying I've done it, but I'm pretty sure it can be done. Like I'm willing to bet what 99% it could get done. So, you know, as long as somebody doesn't walk up to you in the middle of that flight and obviously the plane's not there, I think there's still a way to get around that. And I really do think all these rules and regulations are just too much for what is really happening. The number of people that actually do fly like long range, first of all, there's very few of us compared to every other idiot with a DJI. No offense to anybody here, but you know, I've got a Phantom, and I'm pretty strict about how I use it. I don't go near the airport. I don't go near nuclear power stations. And I think that should pretty much cover it. And I try not to fly above people other than myself. And most of the time I'm out in the field in the middle of nowhere chasing one of my planes over wheat fields. So really, I don't see a reason why I should be paying insurance or, I don't know, any sort of registering. I don't see how this is going to affect somebody wanting to do something bad with a plane. And besides, my experience, at least in this country, is that chances of hitting a piloted airplane are a lot higher when actually flying within the allowed height limit for drones compared to, you know, 2 kilometers up in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I just
that has been my opinion for some time. And as time passes, and I see how you know, pilots of actual airplane fly around here and how close they fly to the ground where they shouldn't be, I think chances are that they're gonna run into something down low, not high up.
Well, welcome to Colin. He's going to give everyone a chance to be one of those DJI life-wrecking pilots later. But we'll bring Colin in later to talk about his next report and how to win. But anyway, welcome, Colin. Glad you could join us. John, I think you're going to have to try. You guys are going to have to try and explain to me again. Are the AMA really trying to sew it up so that they're the only show in town? Is that really what's happening?
Well, I don't know if everybody remembers this, but when the whole registration regulation came about, the FAA was working on setting up some kind of a dual registration that would allow you to register both through the FAA and with them. And a lot of people suggested that, you know, they were trying to turn this into a process to benefit their membership growth. And I think that's probably kind of undeniable. And of course, if they've said several things that the FAA, I think, is contradicted, suggesting that you have to be an AMA member, not just follow their safety guidelines. And within the programming is probably the most dangerous language, because nobody really knows what that programming means. But you know, if it became the law that it has to be at an AMA event or at a CBO event that you're flying, that's the definition of the programming, then that would make it, you know, obviously extremely restrictive. So I don't know what the AMA, I'm not going to try to say I know what their motives are, but some of the actions are suggestive.
Well, Nicola was FPV racing on the weekend. I mean, where's I'm getting a bit ranty, aren't I? Bruce likes to go out in the park and fly, but where were these groups to get into this conversation? The model aircraft flying perhaps doesn't realize what just happened to it last Friday. Do you think that's a fair assertion? In America.
I don't think they knew what happened to them in 2005 and in 2008.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think they understand the gravity of the situation.
But are we speaking of AMA members? Because those are completely illegal if they keep flying on their flying fields. So
yeah, but
that's the same for them.
In states where land costs lots of money, let's say it's you've got to be in a flying field now. States like California, property is very expensive. Property that has some infrastructure like power or that's near a road. If I wanted to start a club, it would be that would be very expensive to do, and I'd have to go somewhere far away to do that. I don't really believe that people that have the park flyers and foamies and the rest of that really need to do that. And I don't really believe that the RC hobbyist is the problem. I mean, the person that's the problem really is the person that goes to DJI. Look, I'm throwing them right under the bus. JDI, and goes down there to Best Buy and plunks down their credit card, buys a drone, and then goes out and flies it. Most people that are doing that have read on the internet that they can make some money, and they're going to try and make some money on the side or whatever, or just have this new technology. But I don't believe it's really the AMA member that's the problem here, or the hobbyist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. And it's a very great shame that they seem to be being thrown under the bus. And thrown under the bus by the same group of people, really, or partly the same group of people that are all on the Drone Advisory Council. Let's do that one more time. Do it to me one more time, I believe the song goes, something like that, isn't it? Drone Advisory Council, including people as James Burgess from Project Wing, Michael Chasen from Precision Hawk, Martin Gomez, Director of Aeronautical Platforms at Facebook. They haven't got a hat in the ring anymore. Gur Kamichi, Amazon Prime Air, and Brendan Shulman from the aforementioned company. Those people are there. They're interested in it. And what I thought was interesting was from the UAS hardware manufacturers, component manufacturers, Nan Amati from Rockwell Collins, and Garmin, Phil Straub from Garmin, and Software Jazz Banger from Airspace Systems Inc. These aren't all names we all know and love from our world.
When you go to the Big Boys Toys, those are names that people know.
Rockwell Collins and Garmin are, but there's other big name RPAS manufacturers that could have been on there rather than Precision Hawk and Amazon Prime Air. What have they got? They've got Prime Air. That's what they've got at the moment. And we know about DJI.
They have those nice little videos that you see on packages being delivered. So they have a nice production. There's also Amazon Studios that produces those nice little videos. So,
okay, you're right. You're right. Come on, Patrick. This is your area of expertise of moaning.
Well, after the articles in the Washington Post, which are linked in the article that I wrote, or little commentary that I wrote, and the late mayor of San Francisco's letter, that thing was a train wreck. As far as I'm concerned, even the person that was the chairman was the guy from Intel, who's, I think I lamented last week or the week before about how what's this guy thinking with the inter-office romance? I mean, come on, man. But anyway, the DAC just has taken it on the chin time and time again, and the RTCA getting fired. I mean, and they have the nerve to say, "Oh, we're going to fire this thing back up and go." There's no commercial end user groups on there. People are let's say aware of DJI's position, which you probably didn't see the article in Politico. But, Peter DeFazio said it was critical of some of the language that was in some of the new proposed bills. And he said, this was a quote, "could have been written by the Chinese toy drone industry," unquote. So people are wise to what's going on, and that they would reconstitute something that has been let's say, has more dings, dents, and scratches than a 1974 Pinto is really surprising.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised they gave it the kiss of life. I thought it had gone away.
Quietly, just slink into the shadows.
But then down at the bottom under other is there's Brian Wynn and Rich Hansen. So AUVSI and AMA are there. Yeah, they didn't.
We've already covered like what's wrong. Where's the AMA on everything?
Oh, there they are.
Well, yeah, there they are. And then there's AUVSI. It's you lost 20% of your membership, but there you are. On the ship of food.
We're not having people joining in and being controversial about this. So I shall move on. I shall move on and say that. I shall say that where is it? Oh, the coverage is getting bad, but the drone is on the way. November 190 TC is on its way to Moon Sunny. It's in Canada. The one that's going to Fairford. There's something in the air right now, flying to Fairford, and that's the Sky Guardian. That's been widely touted as the first, our first flight across the Atlantic, which we know isn't, but of course it was the first mall flight. So that's on its way, and it'll arrive in the early hours of the morning in the UK. It's quite an interesting story, isn't it? Or is it not an interesting story? It's not. It's not. It's
having a remote control plane doing a mission from point A to point B. What's new on that?
Well, if you put it like that, I suppose so. Yes, I suppose you're absolutely right.
Even Nikolai can do it on his believer if he has enough power and gas and batteries to do it. Come on, that's not such a great thing.
Do you know? I think if you put some petrol in there and did it the way of Maynard Hill, you might very well get that sort of a platform across a modern platform across the water. It could easily be done. Bruce could do it.
How many kilometers is that supposed to cover?
5,000. What?
More than that. More than that. Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
5, 7.
Must be about 7. Must be.
I don't think a believer can do that yet.
Yeah, come on, Nikolai. You can do it if you try it hard enough.
Maynard Hill did it with like a tiny can of petrol many years ago. So yeah, no, it could do with a similar sized airframe. It's not that impossible. Not with electric.
And the interesting thing is hydrogen. We have Bruce's hydrogen. So
yes,
don't forget Bruce's hydrogen.
But the most interesting thing is that when Maynard Hill did it, there was a small group of people cheering on the plane's arrival. If he did it again today, there'd be a small group of people arresting everybody.
Yes.
Right, so.
Yes. Oh, drop culture. What's the thought about the gas generator hybrid multi-rotors? Who's going to pick that one ball up from the comments?
Yeah, theoretically a good idea. Yeah. It can work.
That's a definitive answer. I don't think we can get better than that. Bruce, so what's your definitive answer?
One.
Oh, go on then.
Louis nailed it.
Louis nailed it. There we are. Have you got an opinion, Nicola?
Yeah. I know of a few people around here that have experimented with such hybrid systems, and they did report quite a significant increase in flight times because you've got that additional generation that actually helps the battery and supplements it, and flight times were well in excess of 1 hour easily.
Yeah, but the thing is, Nikolai, as a mechanical engineer, you are trained to know that a petrol engine has a coefficient of efficiency of X%. So you have those X% of efficiency of a petrol engine, and then you have the other efficiency of the electric motor. So basically the result is the multiplication of both. So you'll get a value that is not as efficient as a full petrol engine. Basically, that's it.
I think I'm not sure if that makes a difference, but I don't think they use petrol. I think it was running on something else, and it was rather small, so it will carry it. I don't know. I think somebody did some experiments for our military, and I think they were pretty happy with the results.
There's a group in Australia that are standing up a purely fuel multi-rotor, and we hope to get them on soon when they are ready to reveal all.
Those mixed, those hybrids is the Chevy Bolt of the UAVs, right?
But hang on a minute. We could
not the Prius, the Chevy Bolt.
But why don't we just make a flying Chevy Bolt, and then we've got a taxi, and then we're styling.
All we need is a ramp then.
What do we need?
A ramp.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's.
I think reindeer will do better.
And well, we know that Bruce will be in charge of that, obviously, with the whitest beard.
That Santa-looking guy.
Exactly.
What happened to the hydrogen fuel cell drones? Is that here today and gone tomorrow?
We have to wait for Bruce. Bruce is too busy now producing hydrogen. We can see behind him the hydrogen bottles being filled up, right, Bruce?
Yeah, no, hydrogen fuel cells not going to fly. Hydrogen has too many problems with storage and generation, and it's just it's this so much better, simpler technology that does it better. It was one of those things like hydrogen powered cars, great, but the infrastructure and the problems, even simple stuff like they were going to convert internal combustion engines to run on hydrogen, but then you get hydrogen embrittlement of steel. There are so many small details that basically knock it out of the sky. It's like all those wonderful technologies that are about to come. We're 99% of the way there, but we've got this 1% of unsurmountable technical hurdles to overcome. Fuel cells only work really on spaceships where there's no other alternatives.
Oh, come on, Bruce. You already have a name for your hydrogen vehicle. It's called the Hindenburg from New Zealand.
So you stole my joke, because I was going to talk about my warehouse dirigible in the sky that I'd be making Amazon drone deliveries from.
Yes. Well, yes. If you've ever flown an airship, hands up those that have. If you've ever flown one, you'll know what a pig they are for ground handling. They are an absolute pig, and that's. I love the idea. I love the idea. It'd be fabulous if someone brings them back. I could float back up to Europe. Oh, it would be wonderful. Ocean liner in the sky, but it ain't gonna happen, sadly. It would be wonderful, but yeah, they're a real pig.
Because of the flying to Europe, have you seen that on the news that NASA is testing supersonic planes that don't do the sonic bang as high as they usually do, so they could fly above land?
Yeah, but you've got to have the money, haven't you? You've got to have the money. And in the comments, I've seen Delta Z say they begin to make some efficiencies with larger multicopters, and they would know, having made the propellers for Cora. More of that. It was just watch last week's episode if you don't know what I'm talking about. Now, Colin's been waiting very, very nicely there, and we haven't actually tested your audio. Can you hear us over, Colin?
Yes, I can hear you. You got me coming through?
Yeah, you are 5 by 5.
All right.
It's survey time again, and we can become DJI drone deviants and win a Spark. Was it a Spark? I think it was. What do our dear viewers have to do? In fact, let me put the link in the side while we're talking.
Right. Yeah, so there's always an incentive with a survey. So I go out and I buy a Spark drone myself, and I got a package from B&H Photo, and got the controller, and got an SD card, and got some Polo Pro filters for it. Plus, I go out and I buy $200 worth of Visa cards, so 2 Visa cards. That's just an incentive for people to complete the survey. And the survey is one that we do every year. It's a benchmark survey on the drone industry. Four areas we look at: drone purchases, we look at service providers, that is those offering for outside hire drone services, and we do a survey of drone business users. Those are those who perform drone projects internally, and they may hire outside contractors, drone service providers, or have their own pilots, either way. And then all of the software business. So software that includes three parts of the kind of software that's available out there: drone operations and logging, automated mission planning, and then what software people are using, third category, for their image processing. And that can be video or photos, but it can also be the creation of maps. So those are the three areas that we survey. And last year we had about 2,600 respondents. Are you still hearing me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, about 2,600 respondents last year, 60 industries. Most of it was North America. That's just because that's typically who responds to surveys. But we're trying to push out further this year. And the survey runs for a month, so people have several weeks to think about how they want to respond, and they can start the survey and always come back to it. And that's it. What we get at the end is really a benchmark. We really get a true benchmark of the industry. And this year we're kind of expanding a little bit. So last year we got data that told us who's flying and for what purposes. Why do people buy drones? Are they buying it just for hobby video, or are they buying it for professional purposes? What drones are they buying? No surprise, it's DJI mostly, about 72-75% of the market share, at least in North America, higher in some other countries. We see the price that people are paying for drones. So last year we got a good sense that because we do this every year, we got a clear sense of how prices are marching downward, because the functionality of the software of the drones, the camera, and the software itself is marching upward for the same price point. So people are buying less expensive drones to do the same things that they did a year before. This year, we'll have a better understanding of how many drones are in people's fleets. So not only the service providers, but also the business users. We'll have a better understanding of how much money drone service providers make or don't make. We think that hasn't changed. Most of the drone service providers that we see don't make much money. Most of it's a part-time business. They don't have very many projects per month. Only 85%, 85% make under $50,000. So only a few amount of people. It's like 5 or 6% actually make above $100,000. That's a sustainable business. This year, we'll get a better understanding of business users. We'll get a better understanding of what's the maturity level of their projects. Are they just starting out, or are they proof of concept, and are they just starting up, or are they fully integrated and they have a independent operational group, or are they somewhere in the middle? My hypothesis is it's going to be a mix. You're going to have some companies, but not as many, that are at that full maturity stage, and most of them are going to be at the beginning or the middle. Again, whenever you do research, you always have a hypothesis, but you never know until you get the data back. And we expect not much movement on software. We think most people pretty much use for their software analysis to create maps. It's pretty much Drone Deploy and Pix4D. And then for editing images, it's either Apple or Adobe. That's what we expect to see, but we never know till the end.
It's interesting. It makes you wonder why Pix4D or Drone Deploy weren't on the DAC. But anyway, far be it from me to say. But so, how much grandstanding? How do you get rid of grandstanding? Because of course, my drone company makes $1 million a day. How do you get rid of people? How do you do that in a survey? Get rid of nonsense?
Yeah, there's trap questions in there. So we have traps. So we have qualifying questions up front. We have qualifying questions in the 4 sections. And then when they start a section, we have trap questions. So we can gauge by, if they're grandstanding on the number of, say, the revenue that they're getting for their drone service business. We can also square that against how many full-time and part-time employees they have. So, and I didn't see last year a lot of grandstanding. I didn't see people do it. But we have another trap question. And everybody says that drone service providers, they say, yeah, I do aerial photography and video, and I do inspections, and I do construction, and I do. So we forced an answer last year, and we think we got better results as a result of forcing the option, which is tell us what your primary offering is. And lo and behold, it comes out that it's aerial photography and video. We found this, and you probably saw this too, when we were looking at Section 333 data. There were multiple people coming in under a rubber stamp application, getting in as a Section 333 provider, and they were saying that they did all of these operations. But then you Googled it, and you found out that they live in a trailer park. No, I'm serious. And so, you wonder, about these companies that people have created. They hang on a shingle, and it's not that hard. You just simply, apply for a DBA, and you get your city license, and all of a sudden you're a business. So we saw that carry over into the pilots also. When we first started getting Part 107, we started looking at the individual registrations and began to drill down and do Google searches on people's addresses, same type of thing. It doesn't mean there aren't legitimate businesses, and I'm pro small business. So some businesses start out small and they grow large. I'm all for that. But I think one of the things the survey does is tells us what's really going on in the industry, and how much how much hype there is versus the reality.
Before I throw it open to the floor, that was actually going to be my next point. Is what's your feeling on the current status of hype? Your feeling, perhaps, which isn't measurable, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think it is measurable. I still see it. I look at all of the reports that people produce, and a lot of these come out of India and come out of the UK and several other countries that are far flung across the globe, saying that they know how big the industry is going to be, just based on what they've seen in other reports. So they just re-report what somebody else's number, and a lot of big numbers do get thrown around as far as how big the industry is. One of the other things we're doing this year, Gary, and it's a slow project, it's taking a while, is I'm trying to come up with what I believe would be a real true industry forecast. We're going about it in a very different way. We're going about it by looking at the individual use cases within an industry. So let's say, for example, we're looking at construction. We look at the number of, and we pick a country like the US. We say, how many housing starts? How many new buildings? And what can drones do for that? What kind of inspection work? And what's the value of that particular operation versus having a drone or not having a drone? And it may be a new operation. That's fine. We put a value on it, and then we tie that to how many what kind of adoption we see within the industry. So we'll have a clear sense from industry by industry what the value is that drones provide for that industry. Now that's a bottoms up way to look at and forecast the industry, as opposed to these other reports that go very much top down. They look, they pick a large number and put a finger in the air and go, well, we think it's going to be $127 billion, without really understanding what's going on. And we compare this to our survey data. So we look at the survey data and we say, 30% of commercial drone operations is surveying and mapping. Okay, well, that's got to square with what's happening in somebody's forecast, right? If we're going to forecast the industry, you need to be forecasting the effort and the value and the amount of purchases and what for that particular activity within the industry. So same thing with aerial photography and video, right? Largest portion of the reason why people fly drones is still aerial photography and video. We don't think that's changed. That hasn't changed since we've been doing the survey way back since 2014. We do see upticks in certain industries, and that's what the survey does to help. It helped divide out that hype versus reality. Plus, this other project that we're doing, we're about, I'd say, 2/3 of the way done.
Colin, just a small question. Do you also see a race to the bottom on the price of the services that, for instance, aerial photography has been charged?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I won't name names of companies that provide, or advertise commercial services and then contract out. But let's just say it's $75 for a job. Well, $75 for a job to go inspect somebody's roof. You have to carry your insurance. You have to buy the aircraft. It's your time. You have to get in your car and drive. And there's gasoline, and there's et cetera. There's maintenance. All this thing. You can't make money at $75. Yes, there is definitely a race to the bottom. We asked that in the survey. So we asked, particularly in the survey, what's inhibiting you from your business growing? Last year, overwhelmingly, the answer was competitive pricing and illegal operators.
Yeah,
I definitely think the illegal operators are one issue, especially if you're the law-abiding type of person. But the other thing I want to bring in there too is, okay, so the other day we went and did something with the mosquito vector people, and they said, oh, we got a tenfold return on the drone investment. We bought this drone and it's so much cheaper for us. All right, that makes sense. However, let's compare that to a guy that's going to do services. These guys already have buildings, trucks, laboratories, computers, internet, phones, labor burdens covered. You need more people. Hey, Billy, get over here. Johnny. So there's all of this infrastructure in between, and you're like, well, you're really not getting that tenfold return, because if I was some guy that wanted to do that as a service and I needed to buy, a new Chevy 2500 and the computers and all of this stuff that's involved with doing the operation, I probably wouldn't get a tenfold return on my $1,500 drone. That'd be like that's the pocket change part of it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to quantify these things when people, it's going to be, in construction, it's going to be $100 million, Yeah, I mean, if you already have the guy doing the thing and he went and he bought a $350 Spark, yes, I can see where, we made a 20-fold, but reality, when you add all the other overhead, labor burden, insurance, and all the rest of that stuff on there, can't make any money at $75. You could go drive Uber and make $12 an hour.
Well, Alapaz is a force multiplier, isn't it? If you have a skill, if you have the guys from Dropcopter there in the comments at the moment, if you've got orchards and you can pollinate stuff, if you're a surveyor already, but if you don't have that skill that you can leverage, it is well, I'm sure people will be very successful and good luck to them, but it's a very, very steep slope to climb if you don't have a specialist skill to leverage. But that's just my opinion. Could be wrong.
No, it's true. It's true. One of the, one of the trap questions we've got in there is we ask people right off the bat before they answer anything else in the survey, what industry are you in now? And you'd be surprised how many people say they are retired. So when we look at the demographics of who's flying and doing drone services, the age populations very much shift towards the people who are over 52.
That is interesting.
And the age population of what we see for people who are have or involved in a drone program within an existing business, like a construction company or like an architecture company, or like a quarry surveying site, a quarry or a mine, or some kind of existing commercial operation where they do surveying, it tends to be lower and towards the middle, and those are the existing surveyors. The other thing that's pretty clear from what we've seen in previous surveys is that the surveying and mapping field in general, and Patrick was talking about this, is they have an existing skill and they already have the overhead. They're already providing a service to somebody. The engineering groups are doing surveying and mapping, and they're doing GIS work for other companies, and they've been doing it under contract for many, many years. the drone is just another tool, and for them, they're not hiring as much outside pilots. And what we're seeing is in the groups that are standing up internal operations, let's say you're a large company like an oil services company, et cetera, they'll start with an outside contractor, but then realize that soon that it's cheaper and better for them from an operational safety standpoint and all the training and certification that somebody needs. It's better to just get that person a Part 107 pilot's license or an aviation in another country, an aviation certificate. It's cheaper for them and better for them to just train and have an internal employee be the pilot.
So do you think the companies that are providing jobs at $75 a head are likely to have much of a future?
I don't know.
Yes, they do. Yes,
know.
they do.
Yeah, here's what I don't know. They probably do because there's always going to be new entrants. It's a low bar. You just need $1,200 and you're in. And some people are ignoring insurance, right? They're just completely ignoring it. They don't have liability insurance. Yeah. Yeah, they are. And well, you know this, right? This is nothing new. We all knew this, and I'll find out, better in this survey because I have a specific insurance question. But one of the things, and you guys have already probably talked about this, what's going to happen when the Part 107 pilots who first got their certification expire after the 2 years? How many are going to re-up and renew?
Yeah, I'm interested in that. That is a very interesting.
We won't know, at least we won't know with hard data. We may see a drop in the net number from the FAA. That's one way, but we think it'll happen over time, right? Because people didn't get their license all on September 1st when the regulation happened, right? There was this influx, and it was probably from September to January, February, or March of 2017 where we begin to see that uptick of pilots come in, and we think that maybe. We're guesstimating, again, it's a hypothesis, don't know, 25% will float out because they simply have tried it for 2 years, can't sustain a full-time business, and they're going to question, well, do I continue going forward with this? Yeah, I probably should have insurance, and my service provider is requiring that I have insurance. Or my drone service, person that contracts with me is requiring that I have my own insurance. Okay, that's expensive. There is some on-demand, products out there that people can use, but we don't know how well adopted that is. We'll find out in the survey, but we think next year, when we do the survey again, next summer is when we'll really see the shakeout. And we'll
I agree. I think next year is going to be a fairly critical year for quite a few companies. Quite a few companies are running out of their VC money at the moment. And it's or spending it, not running out, spending hard. And I think next year is going to be interesting.
See on the industrial survey world, not on the drone mapping and roof inspection, but on the industrial survey world. For instance, if I want to go to a windmill park, wind turbine park in US, I'll have to comply with a bunch of regulations specific to that park, including one registration about construction or something that is a course that has to be done. Not only the drone regulations that have to be complied to, but also the regulations that everybody that goes inside that space has to comply. So, and have that every day and on the industrial inspection worlds. So have a spreadsheet with a bunch of boxes. Do we have this certificate, that certificate? And we have to get them all in place for every customer, no matter, and for every new geography that we operate. There's a new set of regulations, and on some of those geographies, and I think I already said this, for instance, in Denmark, it's much easier to hire a local pilot and a local drone. And use our specialized payload to do the work, because the hassle to get a registration, to get a company installed in Denmark, and then get that company registered with the authorities on that country, and then get the drones registered on that country. and the pilot's certified on that country, it's just a real hassle. So it's much easier to just rent the drone and the pilot, and we use our specialized payload to do operate industrial. The same in US. If I want to go to a wind park in US, I have a lot of regulations, including those specialized courses that every construction site has in US. So those are business expenses that have to be accounted on the services.
This is interesting because we're talking about how SUAS or models, whatever, are now part of in America, at least they're aircraft. And yet if you fly an aircraft into a different country, you don't have to register as a new pilot there. You don't have your aircraft registered in that country. So when are we going to see the cross-border allowances that apply to manned aircraft applying to unmanned aircraft? Because if we are aircraft,
if you're using them commercially, mate, if you're using them commercially, you would have to jump in line with a lot of stuff. That's the difference there, Bruce. You'd have to here if you bought something from the UK. I think one of the industries that makes a shed load of money is oil and gas, and everybody that's on oil and gas spends far more time doing the safety training to be on that oil rig and gas place. That RPAS stuff is nothing. It's nothing, and those
the cost of renting a tug to go to a oil platform is mind blowing. So it gets, if you have to go and do a survey of a wind turbine in the middle of the ocean, just the cost of renting the tug to take you there is absolutely dramatic. So no way you can charge $75 or $200 or $300 or $1,000 or $2,000 to do a survey of a single turbine. That raises the costs way up.
I had a couple other ones. I wanted to, and I'll throw this out here. So we've heard the estimated cost for drone delivery was going to be $1 for the last mile, right? But I don't know if anyone else saw this, but yeah, I do. But the cost, Swiss ATC provider was talking about an estimated cost per flight to get into the airspace in like Switzerland. That was going to be like $2 per flight. So I guess double the estimate of the last mile delivery there. And then the only other one I had was, did anyone take the survey that the FAA is doing for small UAS?
I did. Yes, I did. And yeah, with the pay to play with UTMs and all that sort of thing, as you correctly you revealed earlier, but the dear viewer won't know, my UTM map is here. This is how we're going to do it. Yeah, that's how we're going to do it. Yeah, pay to play. Well, that's another thing. There's just like John, we can circle all the way back around to 2005. We can go back to the fight that John has been the only person to put the nose to the wheel and do something with. We've been talking about pay to play for years, Patrick, years, and it's rolling out in front of us, as we've seen John's battle rolling out in front of us. This has as well. Yet we're still the crazies.
I'm curious about something. If I can roll back the conversation just a little bit, Colin talked about reports on the future of the drone industry, but I'm curious, have these reports accounted for, or do they even think about the regulations that are being drawn up for that industry and how that is going to affect its expanse, development, growth, etc.? Because as it seems now, regulations are starting to take effect in different countries around the world, not everywhere at once, but it would seem that, you know, phantom class drones would require in some places, if not most cases, most places, insurance, and that's certainly going to put a lot of people off, and that is no small part of the drone market nowadays. So that's probably going to affect things. But have these reports taken into account those regulations, or are they just based on a, you know, free growth, no restrictions, no nothing?
I think that one's
very few have. They don't account for it like in a scenario basis to really say, you're right. Most of them are just, here's the unbridled growth of potential of the industry without looking at all at regulation and the effect of it.
You know what grinds my gears on that deal is when you see like the AUVSI report as justification and the NASA IG report for spending $87.6 million. Well, the market's supposed to be worth $82 billion, so we might as well shovel $87 million at it. That's an investment, and really, it's good money, maybe good money after bad. But I said that early on in the ARC, they were asking for numbers of estimates on who and how many people would be flying in the NAS and how many drones there would be. And as I recall, they asked RTCA for this time period that we're in now, or the 2017, and RTCA said none, no commercial drones. I always said it's regulatory dependent. The more regulation you have on this, the more cost you have on that, the less people will be flying. I think we found that in the United States is anything that you over-regulate seems to get, let's say, hard to be in business. It's hard to be in business. Legally.
I think already the last time, I've forgotten the last time I looked, but already the numbers for the estimated number of Part 107 operators on the part of the FAA and the reality of those people that have taken the test is already below their forecasts. And I suspect, as Colin alluded to, as the 2-year timescale starts coming up, there's not going to be so many there. So we're already below the curve. And I personally also think as BVLOS rolls out with longer range platforms, we'll actually need less operators because BVLOS platforms will get more work done. And I think the market is about to change. We're at quite an exciting point in technology where exciting things can happen, and we really won't need so many operators. I don't know. Back to the floor.
Well, can I comment on that? Because I tweeted out something like a day or two ago. I got the latest figures from pilot certifications from the FAA, and I've been tracking that for over a year, and I have a graph that shows the growth and the growth rate. And the growth rate has been, it's lumpy and bumpy, but on average, it's about 7% a month. And in the past year, we've grown 90%. So we've almost doubled in a year the number of Part 107 pilots. Now that doesn't surprise me because we are seeing more, and we'll find out again in our survey, more and more pilots getting certified who work for existing companies. These aren't the drone service providers. They came in first. Now that's who's coming in as pilots are the people who are working for companies, and they want to have a drone operation, and they're taking their people and they're getting their certifications. But the projection of growth rate for, still continues at about 7%. However, in the last 2 months, the growth rate slowed a bit. Now, that's not unusual. 2 months is not a trend. 3 months is sort of looking like a trend. 4 months is a trend. So in the past 2 months, it was 4% and then 5% growth. That's per month, right? So, in general, we think that the number of pilots will grow. Our take, and this is Mike Blades at Frost & Sullivan's take too. We talk about this a lot. He's the other analyst. I know you've had him on in this hangout. Is when we look at beyond visual line of sight and that we think that exactly as you said, Gary, what will happen is that there won't be this magical uptick and hockey stick in the growth of the industry. What we think will happen is that the first impact will be that one operator will be able to operate multiple drones. The software is there now for that. And we're fully capable of doing it. And there are companies, like Aerobotics, they do it in remote locations in Australia at mines. So you have one operator who's, at a workstation and controlling, a drone in a box that can go up and do its survey and come back and change its battery and do all that stuff. We think there'll be a modest uptick in that, but we don't see a huge uptick. And that's because we don't think beyond visual line of sight has as much potential as people have played it up to be. In linear surveys, it certainly has a benefit. And I know you were talking earlier, you were talking about the hybrid aircraft. You know, the people who have tested this and have beyond visual line of sight waivers have tested these hybrid drones. They don't have a lot, they don't have a big fleet, but BNSF has. And several of the tower companies have, and the contractors to the like American Aerospace, they've tested these hybrid drones, and they're big honking things, right? They're large, and they've tested them. And there's other countries who have tested the hybrids and gone for beyond visual line of sight. But the applications that they are focused on aren't the bulk of what the applications for drones are. We still think the bulk is within the visual line of sight, and we think that the bulk of that we haven't squeezed all the juice out of that lemon. We think that there's plenty of within visual line of sight operations that haven't been done.
I think it's an excuse, is what I think, because everybody goes, well, you know, the 82 billion or whatever didn't happen because we can't fly beyond visual line of sight. Nah, I don't really believe that. I think the same thing. There's some juice in the lemon. And the key is in better data. That's what I keep. You got to have better data so you differentiate yourself from your comrades. The other thing is though, Gary talked about how the estimates are kind of flattening out a little bit. So this leads me back to the UTM thing. So if you take out the 101 people, if you take the hobbyists out, the million people there, and then the numbers aren't really making the estimates, who's left to use the UTM? And how much is that going to cost to build and maintain, and who's going to pay for that? And can the droners, let's say, afford that overhead?
Well, yeah. Well, it's the perfect. And why have I got this Lego box that's got a Raspberry Pi in it in my hand? The perfect example of that is ADSB and the huge amount of money spent on an infrastructure that has been replaced by hundreds. And in the UK, the Nats will tell you that the enthusiast-based receiver network is way, way better for the ADS reception than, and they didn't spend a fortune on it. And in America, so it's exactly the same sort of thing, really. Yeah, air traffic control needs to change. It needs to get itself updated and all that sort of thing. Can drones pay for it? Well, you're laughing, Patrick, but it can be more efficient. It can be safer. There's all manner of things that can happen with technology, and it should happen.
So you're speaking on a peer-to-peer network of UTM, Gary?
Sorry, say again?
You're speaking on a peer-to-peer network of UTM? That won't fly.
Well, no, all sorts of technologies of stuff moving in the sky. You know, we've come
AI.
AI, yes, and we need Bruce chain, of course. Bruce chain,
and more 3D renderings.
Yes.
Don't forget the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, well, no,
it's AI. I was talking artificial insemination.
Well, now the other thing is people talk about this UTM system being like, you hit it like a light switch, the computers take care of it, and you just walk away. By time all of that stuff is certified, I watched a little video on LinkedIn today, and the guy was talking about beyond visual line of sight, and that's really where the money is, and the cost is in the overhead of having a pilot. And I'm thinking to myself, the cost of certifying all the component system software and everything else for UTM is going to make the pilot look cheap at $12 an hour.
I thought it was very interesting. Did you say $5 an hour, $2 an hour? You're overpaying. Did you see? I thought it was very interesting that Colin Gwynn came out with BV's.
Did you watch the video too?
I didn't watch the video. I read the report.
Watch the video.
Then the interesting thing was he mentioned certification, and that's a huge sea change from sort of where he was at with 3DR when software will conquer the world and Silicon Valley can change everything. And
was Anderson's mantra.
Well, it was part of that whole thing. So then when I saw he'd written that, certification, really? But you said, but.
Come on, he's entitled to change his opinion now that he's on a different business.
Yes, I suppose so. Yes, is that the right thing to do?
It's the same deal though. Even and this might be another thing, Colin, that you're seeing is like people are talking about. Everybody wants to do this 137 in aerial application thing, and I go and I talk to the airborne, the people that applicate on a big scale, and they're like, yeah, we're getting $10 to $20 an acre to apply pesticides. And you think about that, okay, you got that little DJI thing, or even a RMAX or whatever, it's going to be a long day at the corn patch, and you're going to make them $10 an acre,
But that has to be something where ground-based robots that look at the thing and they can stand or motor on slowly, look at the plants and do their thing. That's yeah.
There you have it. And his name is something Spanish, and he's got a backpack and built-in sensors and AI. And he's like, and
it's very true. It's very true. Yeah.
No one ever factors black market labor into any of these forecasts. And did you have a question on your survey for that, Colin? For the agricultural.
Look, we've already gone quarter of an hour past the hour, so I guess this is the point where I say, did anyone else see anything else? But I'm going to preface that by saying I haven't seen anything from the New Zealand CAA website about our favourite incident yet, Bruce. It's still that BK117 back in February, whenever it was. But anyway, anyone else have anything else before we go? Going once. No, it seems not. Going once, going twice. Dear viewer, thank you very much for watching wherever you've been in the world. I hope you have a safe week, and if you're flying on the weekend, have a lovely flights. Don't forget to join us 2100 GMT next week, where who knows what we'll talk about. So I look forward to seeing you then. Cheers, everybody. Thanks very much for joining one. Thanks very much, John. Best of luck to you in the future. You have our support at very least. If we can help in any way, we will. And yeah, hopefully things will go right for you. Anyway, thanks very much, everyone. Cheers, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.